Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows Compiler. Today we will look at the Windows Form Designer to provide a second form and use a progress bar. This was our application at the end of the last video. We have added to our dialog to allow users to have URLs on the dialog itself, using a rich text control. However, all the work we've done so far in this application is on a single dialog. When you start doing development applications in PowerBasic, you're likely to develop applications which have more than just one single dialog. You will have a main dialog, and you will probably link to other dialogs from that primary one. And that's what we're going to look at today, the creation of a second linked dialog. One of the issues you may encounter when you're doing multiple dialogues, or when you're doing a large amount of processing in the background, is you don't want your primary or visible dialog to show not responding to a user. When users do see not responding, they think the application is about to crash. But in reality, it just means the processing is concentrating on something other than the dialog that's being shown to the user. And today we're going to look at techniques for avoiding this problem. But first, we're going to go into the Forms Designer and design our second dialog. So here we are in the Forms Designer, and as at the moment there is only one dialog in the application, this is the one it's actually shown to us. To create a new dialog, we merely have to go up to the toolbar and click on the New Dialog icon. And this gives us a brand new dialog. So we'll make it slightly wider, and we will center it on screen by setting the style, or DC Center. So if we click the test icon, we'll see it appears in the center of our screen. On this dialog, I want to use this dialog as a process reporter. So we're going to put a progress bar on this dialog. In our toolkit, you'll see there's a small icon for progress bars. So we'll double click that, and we will create a large progress bar on the dialog. Like so. We'll leave the defaults as they are. Additionally, I want a label in this dialog so we can pass messages to the user. And again, we'll make it quite large. And we'll give it a name. And we'll change it to use blue as the colour. So there we have our completed dialog. So let's just give the dialog a title. So we'll also give it a caption and a sys menu, and we'll apply that. And we'll save that back to the application. So once more, we can go and have a look at the code to see what it's put into the application. So if we go to the constants at the beginning, we'll see we now have 3 new constants. 1 for the dialog itself, 1 for the progress bar, and 1 for the label. So how are we going to call this dialog from our primary dialog? If we hit the F2 button, we'll see there is now 2 additional functions in our list. There's one for the dialog itself, which has the 2 controls on it, the progress bar and the label. And we have a callback function, our event handler. So the name of the dialog is Show Dialog Processing. If we go back to our original dialog in its callback function, its event handler, further down here, we'll see there is actually an existing submit button. So once that submit button is clicked, we currently validate the form. And what we're going to do next is we're going to call the function which will display our new dialog. And we will pass it the value of our dialog, the dialog handle. So if we try running our application now, and we go through filling in our form. And once we hit the submit button, our new dialog appears on the screen. Now we haven't put any code in the application to handle what appears on the dialog, but if we can just close this, it will go back to the original dialog. However, you will see this is a modal dialog. Therefore, if the user attempts to click back on the original dialog, will not allow this, because the new dialog must be closed first before we can return to the second one. However, it doesn't stop us moving the second dialog around on the screen. So let's go and put some code into our new dialog. So let's have a look at the event handler for the new processing dialog. And we're going to put some code into the initialization section. Now we know we have a label on that dialog which is going to display some text. So first of all, we will make that text a little bit bigger. And we will do this by using the control set font command, exactly as we did in the previous videos when we were setting the size of the font on the first dialog. So there is our label for processing, and here is the existing font we're going to use. Next, we're going to set the text that appears on that control. So if we try running the application now, and we go through the form filling in again, there is our started processing message appearing on our new dialog. So next we need to do some preparation for the progress bar. The progress bar has a number of defaults. I'm going to put the commands in to allow us to change these. First of all, we're going to set the range of the progress bar. The default for ranging is between 0 and 100, mostly used for percentages. So to set that or to change that, you can use progress bar set range followed by a number of parameters. The first being the dialog handle, then the handle of the control, and then the starting of the range and the ending of the range. So if you wished it to be between 1 and 1000, you would change this 100 to 1000. But we'll leave it for the 100 for the moment. Another option you can use is the progress set step command. This allows you to set a stepping marker. Every time you advance by one step, it will advance, in this case, by 10 units, which will be 10% of the progress bar in this case. The default for this, if you do not use this command, would be 10 anyway, so you can change this to any other number. Now that we've set the defaults for the range and the step, we're going now to set up a timer. This will allow us to trigger a timer after a certain number of milliseconds, allowing us to repeat an action. So first of all, we're going to set up a timer constant, as you may well have more than one timer on a dialog. So here is our new constant, ID timer1, and we're giving it a value of 2000. So we go back to the event handler for our new dialog. So after we've set the progress bar, we're going to create the new timer. And here is the code for the new timer using the Windows API set timer call. It takes again a number of parameters: the handle for the dialog, the handle for the timer using the constant we've just created, and a number of milliseconds. So this will set up a timer which will trigger every 500 milliseconds. So next we have to set up an event in here to handle the triggering of the timer. So here is the event to handle when the timer is actually triggered. So if we wish to advance our progress bar, we could put a command in here that would set the value of the progress bar or advance it for each time the timer is actually called. We can first of all use the progress bar get position command to work out the value of the progress bar at this moment in time, populating the position variable. This new variable we can then test to see if it's less than 100. If it's less than the maximum value, then we can step the progress bar one step forward. Otherwise, we can just stop the timer, like so, using another Windows API call called kill timer. So before we run the application, we'll need to declare this new variable at the beginning of our callback function. So let's try running the application now. And we fill in our details as before. And there is our progress bar advancing. So it gets to 100, and we can then close this down. We can also put some code in the application so that once it does get to 100, it will end the dialog. Now that works quite nicely, but what we want to do next is we want to simulate some back-end processing. So I'm going to change the way this application works. We're going to create some back-end processing in a PowerBasic thread. We haven't covered thread handling yet, but we'll take this one stage at a time. So first of all, we'll need to create a couple of custom events. One to handle the advancing of the progress bar, and one to inform our second dialog that processing has now successfully completed. Well, if we go back to the beginning of our application, and there are our custom events we've set up as constants. One for progress event to handle advances of the progress bar, and one to handle when it has completed its processing. And this application is only going to have a single thread. The advantage of thread handling is you can split your work up into a number of separate threads and launch them all at the same time, allowing your application to do some parallel processing. However, in this case, we're only interested in a single thread. But I've created an array to handle the thread handles. There's only going to be one value in this array, but in future applications we may have multiple threads. So let's dimension this array first of all in our pbMain function. And there we're setting up our global array for thread handles. From the value 1 to the total number of threads, which is also 1. So this will be a one-dimensional array with one element. So if we go back to our event handler for the processing, I'm going to create another local variable here called status, which is going to handle the return status when we're closing the thread down. So we now need to create two new events within this callback function. One for progress event and one for progress completed. So there are our two new events. Progress event, which is going to advance the progress bar. This is going to use the progress bar set position to set an explicit position using wparam, which is passed in when this event is called. When the thread has been completed, we will call this event. It will close our thread down and we'll redraw the dialog. We'll then sleep for 1 second and then end our dialog. So once our progress dialog reaches 100%, it will automatically close down. So next we need to handle the creation of our thread. And we can use our timer section to do that. Rather than this approach here, we're going to put in a call to a new function, one to start the thread processing. And here is our new code. Our first task is to kill off the timer. So after the timer has initially launched, it's only going to fire once. Then the timer will be killed off. At that point, we're going to use the new thread create command. This is going to pass to this new function the handle of our dialog. This is our progress dialog. And it's going to get back from that a value which is the thread handle, which we will store in our global array. And our new function is called start thread processing. So all we have to do now is to create our new thread function. And here is the skeleton of our new function. As you will see, this is slightly different from normal functions in that the wording is thread function rather than just function. Then we can have the name of the function and one and only one parameter. In this case, it's going to be the handle of our dialog, and it's passed by value. We're declaring a local variable here for the percentage of the progress bar. Next, we're going to do a for next loop from 1 to 100, stepping 10 at a time. So this will be called 10 times. We're going to use the dialog post command to post back to our custom event, the progress event. and this will set the value of the percentage we wish to use on our progress bar. We will then wait half a second and we will repeat on to the next. So this piece of code from our thread function, which is running quite independently from the main thread handling our event handling, will send a message back every 500 milliseconds to advance the progress bar. Once it has reached the end, we can then trigger messages back to our event handler to both of these functions to say that we're now complete. So our first message on a dialog post command is to say that the event is now reached 100%. And the final post is progress complete. And at that point, we then end our thread function. So before we run our application, we'll need to make sure we have this status variable declared at the beginning of our code. So let's try running the application now and see how far we get. So we hit the submit button, and we've now started processing, and our progress bar is moving along quite happily. And when it gets to the end, there is our progress bar automatically closing. If we try running that once more, we can see we can quite happily move the dialog around without interrupting the processing in the background, as it's running in a separate thread. So in summary, what we've achieved today is we have added an extra dialog to our application, which is called from the first dialog. This dialog is launched modally, which means the user cannot click back on the original dialog until the second dialog terminates. When the second dialog launches, it is launching via a timer a thread function to run in the background. This threaded function can handle any processing you require, allowing the user to have any events displayed on the dialog. Hopefully you'll find this code useful in your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.